into the stretch. Tribovan in front here, length and a half. City Man is in second. On the outside is Rock Emperor in third. Tribovan trying to take them wire to wire here. It is City Man in pursuit in second. Then Devaman and Rock Emperor. It is Tribovan with the lead, and Tribovan is going to do it under Eric Consell to win the Fort Marcy.
Welcome back to Racing Rundown. On this video, we have a preview of the Grade 1 United Nations Stakes at Monmouth Park. This race is being run over 1 3/8 miles. We got 10 horses in this race, and this race is very wide open. There's many different angles you can go with in here. As usual, we're going to get into every single horse and why I think, or what I think about them in here, why I think they will or won't win this race. And we'll start off with the number 1 horse, the likely favorite for this race in Arklow. For Brad Cox, the grizzled veteran, 7-year-old horse, been around for forever. And, you know, he has been, I will say about him, a horse who I've never really been too big a fan of. I've never been Arklow's biggest fan. I usually pick against him when he's running in races. But if you look at his form as of late, he's won his last 3 non-Breeders' Cup stakes. Now, albeit that has been against much weaker competition, but this is not a Grade 1 where he's having to go up against the toughest horses in the world. There's some solid horses in here, but I don't really think anybody is a world beater in here. That being said, he ran in this race last year, and nobody was really world beaters, and he lost. And, you know, it wasn't a bad effort for him, but he did lose. Now, you can make the argument, and I don't think I disagree with you, that he is in the best form of his career. It's the first time he's ever won back-to-back stakes in his career. And you think a horse who's won many graded stakes in his career, that's the first time, or this stretch of his career was the first time he's ever won multiple stakes in his career. Again, you know, like I mentioned, they were against weaker, but if you go back to the Calumet Turf Cup, or the Kentucky Turf Cup, before the Breeders' Cup, he finished ahead of Zulu Alpha, who was a force in the first half of 2020, Pegasus Turf winner, another graded stake win at Gulfstream, second in the Pan American. So very good efforts for Zulu Alpha. We know he's a solid horse. He's running at Arlington. If he gives a good account of himself, that boosts the form of Arklow. I'm going to be against him, though, because he is the favorite, and I don't like the inconsistency that he has been warranted to show. But he is a former Grade 1 winner. If you like him, I know that there are people who do really like Arklow out there. It just is a horse. There is some upside with him coming into this race. The number 2 horse we're going to get to is Epic Bromance, and I'll cut right to the chase with him. This is a horse that I don't really think has too much of a chance. He's got 1 win in his career as of late. He won his first 2 starts back in 2019, but the form has not really been that good as of late. And that 1 win was where he walked on the lead, and he is going to have some kind of company in here. I do like a horse who is going to be on the lead in this race, but it's not him. The Elkhorn was not good. The one good thing about him is that allowance race that he ran in at Gulfstream was at 1 3/8 miles. So he does like this distance, but I don't like the form that he's had as of late. So I'm going to take a pass on him in here. And now we're going to move on to the number 3 horse, Serve the King. One of 3 horses in here for Chad Brown. This horse is a decent horse. If you're looking for the other Chad angle in here to try to get a longer price Chad Brown horse, this is certainly a race that I would say you could have a good shot to find that in. Serve the King isn't a bad horse. He was coming out of a very long layoff in the Monmouth Stakes this year. That was off of a layoff since the 10th of October in 2020, where he also, interestingly enough, ran in the Monmouth Stakes. He's not a bad horse. I would definitely say he could probably run better second back off the layoff, but, you know, his form before that was not great. You know, he was a maiden winner in the United States. He won at Monmouth, and he won his first 2 career starts, but he lost a listed race at Laurel, and I just don't like the form that he's had overall in his career, and I like other Chad Brown horses in this race. Not going to spoil who I like, but he is not the Chad Brown horse that I like. Now we're going to move on to the number 4 horse, Emperador, for trainer Paulo Lobo. This horse is another one that I'm going to be passing on in here. He has not won in 4 career starts in the United States. And a couple of those efforts have been really poor efforts in graded stakes races, and he's getting back up to the graded stakes level. This is a bit of a weaker graded stake, but so were the 2 graded stakes that he ran in November of last year and in the Louisville Stakes in his most recent start. So once again, another horse that I'm going to be passing on in here. And I'm going to stick to the theme of another horse I don't really like too much in here, and that's Fantasio. So this horse had really been spinning his wheels since he came up to the United States. A couple of poor runs, both of them going 1.5 miles. One of them was in the Elkhorn, the other one was in the Louisville Stakes at Churchill Downs. But then he ran a pretty good second place finish in the Belmont Gold Cup behind the winner of that race, Baron Samedi. He was only beaten 2 3/4 lengths. It's very weird to say this about a horse in the United States, but I think Fantasio is 100% a horse that wants even longer than 1.5 miles. And unfortunately for him, there's not really too many races that cater to that kind of horse in the United States. Again, especially if you look at the Louisville, definitely a horse who wants longer than 1.5 miles. So he's a horse that I'm going to pass on in here. I definitely don't like him cutting back from the 2 miles all the way down to a race that's even shorter than 1.5 miles, a stake that a stake in the Louisville where he was very much well beaten and being very far out of it. So if he can find a race going longer than 1.5 miles in the United States, it's not that's other than the Belmont Gold Cup, then he could be a horse that I think could have some success, but at short, just not a horse that I want any part of. And now we're going to move on to the number 6 horse, Winter's Back, for Todd Fletcher. This horse has had some very good form as of late. He ran second in that running of the Monmouth Stakes where he was beaten by a pretty good Chad Brown horse by the name of Devamani. So Devamani's a horse I respect, and I think that Winter's Back is a horse that if you're looking for someone at a price, you could definitely get him in here. I think certainly to run a big race in here, even if he isn't a win candidate. I like his consistency that he's had overall. There's not too much consistency in this race, so you might be reaching for it a little bit where you find it. But his other stake effort this year, the Canadian Turf, wasn't a bad race. He was only beaten a length and a half by 2 horses who beat each other by a neck, and then Gear Jockey finished a length in front of him. So wasn't a bad effort for him in the Canadian Turf, and his 2 stakes efforts have been good, and that allowance win at Aqueduct was a nice one. So if you like him at a price, I think he could be up there in terms of some kind of value. Then he may be your horse for this race. The number 7 horse is Ocean's Map for trainer Greg Sacco, owner trainer, I should say, Greg Sacco. And this horse is coming out of a second place finish in an allowance race at Delaware Park. He ran in that Monmouth Stakes in June of 2021, was 7th in there. He's bounced around the allowance level and even running some claiming races. He's won at the claiming level, but and even does have an allowance victory this year at Pimlico. But he's just a very inconsistent horse. His one start in Graded Stakes Company did not go well, and while I don't think this field is much tougher than that Monmouth Stakes was, I think it is it is on that Monmouth Stakes level, and I don't like a horse who isn't really that proven at the Graded Stakes level. So I'm going to stay away from Ocean's Map in this race. Now we're going to move on to the second of 2 Chad Brown horses in this race, and that's Masterpiece. Masterpiece has made 3 starts in the United States, and 2 of them against the toughest horses that you can come across in this turf division in Grade 1s. A very good run first start U.S. in the Sword Dancer off a very sizable layoff. From his last start before that was in March of 2020, didn't run between March and October 2020. Very solid effort behind America's champion turf horse from last year, Channelmaker. There were good horses in that Joe Hirsch Turf Classic back in October. Came back, won an allowance race at Keeneland. Chad Brown had some very nice allowance efforts from horses at Keeneland. And then his effort at Belmont Park was not terrible. A 6th place finish, although he did have some good horses finish in front of him. I would definitely not use that 6th place finish in the Manhattan as a race to make a case for him. He's probably going to be the longest price of the 3 Chad Brown horses. For some reason, he was favored, or I shouldn't say favored. For some reason, he was lower than the 3rd Chad Brown horse in this race, who we'll get to in a few minutes. I'm not saying his name for one specific reason, and if you know Racing Rundown, you know why I'm not saying his name right now. But that other Chad Brown horse, for some reason, he took more money, but, aside from that, I can see some kind of upside with him, but Masterpiece has just not really performed to a top level in American Stakes Company, to the level where I give him a big shot in this race. So I'm going to pass on the second of 3 Chad Brown horses in this race. And now we're going to get to the number 9 horse, Glynn County, for Mike Maker. Mike Maker has upset this race a pair of times before. I will say, my co-host Eric likes this horse. If you're looking to play that angle with Mike Maker, he doesn't have 2 horses in here, but if you love the Mike Maker long shot in a wide open Grade 1, Glynn County has had some good efforts this year. The last win was an allowance race at Churchill Downs, going 1.5 miles. So he's cutting back a little bit from that, but it was a good win for him in that race. You go back to his 3rd place finish in an allowance that was going 1.1 miles. Definitely wants to go longer than that. And he was only beaten a length and a quarter, in that effort. So it was not a bad effort for him by any means. And then you go to his other allowance win this year. That was at Keeneland, going 1 1/8 as well. A distance he probably wants more than that, so as you can tell by that last win. He could certainly upset this race for Mike Maker. I like the 10 horse in here more so than I like him, though. But Eric likes this horse, and I certainly respect the angle because he has his allowance win this year at Churchill Downs going 1.5 miles was a very good effort for him. However, I do have to say I do have a bit of a soft spot for the number 10 horse, Tribuvon for Chad Brown. Likely going to be the second choice in this race, and I'm a little bit disappointed with Tribuvon because I've been getting him at some very, very good prices this year. This is a horse who didn't do terrible when he was running overseas in France. It obviously didn't really dabble in too much outside of the maiden/handicap level, but gave a good account of himself more often than he gave a bad account of himself. He does have some poor races on the chart, but more good than bad overall in Europe. But since he's come over to the United States, he has been a very solid horse. His first start in the United States was okay. He lost to a horse who I like in large, and Temple has not run as well as he has in earlier months this year, but on his best day, Temple can compete in a graded stake race, and that was a very good effort for him first off the plane, first start in the United States. Had a snap reign in the Fort Marcy in 2020, absolute line through for that effort, but then rattled off 2 straight wins, one an allowance at Belmont Park, and that was over some pretty solid horses. Again, not the greatest field in the world, but horses that have won stakes races. Bella Rocks is one that comes to mind from that effort. And then he had a big layoff, but he won the Fort Marcy at Belmont this year on Kentucky Derby Day. He did it at a big price. He was given the lead, got to set very favorable fractions for himself, and wound up winning the race by 1.5 lengths over City Man, Rock Emperor, and Devamani. Rock Emperor and Devamani have both come back to win races for Chad Brown, so he beat some good horses in that Fort Marcy, and then he ran a very, very good second behind the best turf horse in America, Domestic Spending. He's definitely getting a class break in here. I really, really liked Tribuvon after that Manhattan win. I mean, I liked him in the Fort Marcy, but I liked him especially after the Manhattan effort. That was a very strong effort over good horses in there. Gaffo's a good horse. He won a stake race at Grand Couturier, Belmont Stakes, or the 4th of July weekend, excuse me. Master of Foxhounds, who's a stakes winner out in California, and Rock Emperor, who I already mentioned, has since come back to win. So Tribuvon is a horse that I really, really liked coming out of the Manhattan, to the point where I guaranteed he would win a Grade 1 this year in 2021, and that is why I'm going to be picking Tribuvon in here, because I made the guarantee, I'm going to stick by it, and I threw out the United Nations specifically as a race he could win. I didn't necessarily guarantee that he would win the United Nations exactly, but I guaranteed a Grade 1 win for Tribuvon. I'm going to stick by my word. I really like Tribuvon in here. The formula for him is go to the lead, don't look back. There are a couple other horses in here that I think are going to be relatively close to the lead, but I'm not really super concerned about them. I really like the form that Tribuvon has been in as of late, and I'm willing to eat this one if it doesn't work out, but I like Tribuvon a lot. Like I mentioned, I'm against Arklow, but I really, really like the form that he's been in. I can't underscore that enough. Talked about him very highly on Racing Rundown in the past 2 episodes that he's been featured in. Picked him. I am going to pick him in here, and I have no qualms about doing so. So he's my pick in here. In terms of value, like I already mentioned, I like Winter's Back for Todd Fletcher in here as a value play, and I also like Eric's pick, Glen County, the number 9 for Mike Maker. So I would say I'd probably box those 2 in underneath Tribuvon for 3rd and 4th, just because I have to give an exact order. I'll take Winter's Back for 2nd and Glen County for 3rd. But that's my top 3 in here, going with a horse who's probably going to be the second choice, if not the favorite, and then a couple horses that I think could be some decent prices in here. So that's my pick for the United Nations. Be sure to check out my preview of the Grade 1 Diana up at Saratoga, and Eric will have a preview of the Haskell as well. So be sure to check that out. Subscribe to us on Racing Rundown, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
And they're into the stretch, and Parador's short lead. Admiralty Pier is there. Arklow with that big move on the far turn. Strong Tide is boxed up and behind horses. Baker's Bay is also there. Artemis Eagle's coming up the rail. A Journey to Freedom and Jace's Solitude down to the final 16th. Arklow comes away with the lead. Strong Tide slicing through the pack. So too Red Knight, but Arklow got the jump, and Arklow won it.